Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the debut of our new show, Politically Speaking, with Adam Jarchow and Patty Schachtner. I'm your host and wildly unqualified moderator, Ben Dryden. A special thank you to our sponsor for Politically Speaking, Kirkpatrick Law Offices. Attorney Matt Kirkpatrick provides experienced, professional, efficient, and effective representation in criminal defense, collections, and other legal areas. For more information, find him at Kirkpatrick Law Offices on Facebook or go to mzklawyer.com. That's I suppose for Matthew, Z, I don't know what his middle name is, Zebra, and K, Kirkpatrick, mzklawyer.com. Thank you, Matt Kirkpatrick. All right, well, let's get right to it. Good morning, Adam and Patty. I'm so excited for this morning. How are you guys doing?
Fantastic.
Doing awesome, Ben. How are you?
Great. To be perfectly honest, I'm a little nervous because since it's our first show, like we don't really have a whole lot. I usually kind of get in routine or some scripted things. I don't know. We're just kind of, right before we went live, I'm like, yeah, it's like Saturday Night Live. We just start and kind of see how it goes. So for most people, obviously know the both of you, but for those that don't, or just need a reminder, would you mind taking a minute and just kind of saying who you are and obviously we're doing a political show, so where your allegiances are or how you came to be either a Republican or a Democrat, why you're a Republican or a Democrat. Adam, we can start with you if that's all right.
Sure thing. Adam Jarchow. I am a lawyer, small business owner. I raised in Polk County, owned businesses and practiced law in Polk County, served in the Wisconsin legislature for a couple of years, a couple of terms, right-wing nut job. Patty Schachtner ended my short political career by whooping my butt in a special election. And I've been, pining for revenge ever since. And now I'm going to get it.
Awesome. Oh, and Patty, you're up. Your turn. Same question to you.
So, Patty Schachtner, born and raised in St. Croix County, raised in Somerset. My professional career really is in emergency services, starting in EMS and then going towards death investigation with the medical examiner's office, which I still do. I am a liberal Democrat, and I always, when people meet me, I took a class once to be a death doula, and literally this lady that I was doing the class with, she's like, "Oh my gosh, you're a hippie just like me," and I'm yes. So even in the world of learning about stuff, people look at me as a hippie. So that's how that came to be.
This is going to be a great show.
We should have called it the hippie and right-wing nut job.
Yeah. Yeah, and actually, speaking of that, since it is our debut show, let's talk about real quick how the show came to be, because this was not my idea. I did not contact either of you or both of you and say, hey, I got an idea for a show. The two, because if I did, I would have guessed both of you like, yeah, no way. So this actually was your brainchild. So, and I think, Patty, it was you. I think I talked to you the day after the election. I think it was the day after, maybe 2 days later. And you were the one that brought it to me. Can you kind of walk, people through and how you came up with this idea?
So, I'm a realist, and I kind of knew that my chances of winning the election were over, and that I knew that, it's a pretty red area, but it was interesting. I'm always about having collaborative conversations, and I had this idea of, well, I beat Adam and then Rob beat me, so let's have a show called The Two Losers. That was my idea. and then it when I conceded the night that I lost the election, I told Rob, I'm like, won't you be surprised when me and Adam do a show together called The Two Losers? And he's like, ha, 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 ha. And then talk to you the next day. There you go. And then it all came to be.
Yeah. And first of all, that was incredibly self-deprecating, and I love the name of The Two Losers. For various reasons, we ended up not going with that, and I think it was actually Adam who came up with Politically Speaking, which I kind of like a little bit better because even though Two Losers, it's so on so many levels, it's so good. Yeah, but for whatever reason, we're like, I don't know, maybe we don't. So Adam,
well, you know, but
go ahead.
When Patty asked about it, I said I'll do it, but only under the condition that we make fun of Rob the entire time the whole show. And she was totally in for that.
Yeah. Well, that's an important piece to it. So, Adam, how did you communicate? Because if I understand right, Patty, you had talked to Adam, so I guess for Adam, for you had talked to Patty and discussed this before it was brought to me. What was that conversation like? How did that conversation start?
Yeah, I'm not sure I remember exactly, but I think, Patty and I have stayed in touch a little bit over the years here. And after the election, I think I sent her a text and just told her thanks for her service and appreciated what she did and how she represented me. I think it's no secret that we disagree on political issues, but I've always been impressed by her ability to be collegial with anyone and ability to talk to anyone. And she immediately reached back out and said, we should do a show together. And I was like, yeah, if we can make fun of Rob, I'm in.
All right, and I think we got our making fun of Rob plugs in, but we can certainly have more throughout the show. But I do find that, so two things that really piqued my curiosity when Patty was talking about this, about the idea for this show, was one, the fact that it was Two Losers. Again, so self-deprecating, I thought it was brilliant. And the second part was actually, Adam, I mean, you weren't running against Patty, not this time, but you had reached out to her the day afterwards, and obviously you were a huge supporter of Rob Staffsholt. And the fact that you reached out to her, I thought that was fascinating. To me, that showed, even though that you were politically, like you had mentioned, so far on the opposite side of everything that Patty pretty much is politically, but she was still a person, and you still reached out to her. You certainly didn't have to, and I just thought that was incredible.
Well, I think, and Patty will, I hope she'll echo this, I think anybody that serves in public office, whether you're at a school board, town board, county board, or the state legislature, understands it's hard. I mean, it is really hard because half the people are mad at you all the time. No matter what you do, they're always mad at you. And I appreciate anybody that's willing to step forward and put their name on a ballot and serve. And I appreciated that she was willing to do that. I just wanted to express that to her. And she's very magnanimous, and I just appreciate the service that she rendered to us.
I'm writing down magnanimous so I can look that up later. All right, cool. So we have a couple of topics. So just for anyone that's watching, if you have a question, please put that in the comments, but please don't have that be like a specific question for Patty or specifically for Adam. It should be more like a topic idea, something you would like for the two to discuss. But I do have a few things that I know we had talked about yesterday that we wanted to bring up simply because it just happened yesterday, is President Biden's inauguration. So, Patty, if you want to start, did you watch it? What were your thoughts about just the process of the inauguration yesterday? And what do you think, how do you feel about Biden going forward over the next 4 years?
So, me personally, I was working, so I didn't get to watch it. I got to listen to parts of it, but I met with a bunch of friends last night, and I think the thing overall that we all came to consensus was that it was actually, because it wasn't so over the top, with you actually, once you watched it and you got to have questions with your family and reflect. And for me, the biggest thing that I took out of it, of course, was the poem by Amanda Gorman. I mean, the way she read it, the way she presented it really was thought-provoking. I really enjoyed that. And overall, for me, it was Kamala, kindness, and just, it was empathetic.
So boring.
Well, I didn't think it was boring in that, but I mean, the fact that we acknowledged the 400,000 people that died of COVID was important to me because my dad died of COVID. Mm-hmm. So that was an important piece to the puzzle. And I guess I left feeling like, okay, well, now we got to get back to work. I mean, it's just the next day, We still have COVID. We still have everything else. So I thought it was appropriate.
Adam?
Yeah, I was also working, so I didn't get a chance to watch it. I kind of had it on the background a little bit, and I absolutely love Inauguration Day, mostly because my kids were born on an Inauguration Day, Barack Obama's second inaugural. And so, but I also love the peaceful transfer of power. I think it is the very essence and the cornerstone of our democracy. And I've now been interested in politics long enough to see people that I wanted to get elected take power and people that I didn't want to get elected take power. And clearly I did not want Joe Biden to get elected. I think he's going to be a horrific president. He will, in very short order, propose things that will make me cringe and probably make my face turn red. But he won, and it's over, and it's time to move on, and it's time for America to move on, and it's time for, Republicans to figure out how to win next time, and it's time for, hopefully, for Joe Biden to work with folks in a way that will be good for the country. So I wish him the best of success, but I'm not overly optimistic. Let's put it that way.
Sure. Since you brought up the transition of power, obviously President Trump wasn't there yesterday during this. As a Republican, do you look at this and are you like, man, that's not good? Or you're like, yeah, that's totally fine. He shouldn't have been there. What were your thoughts on that?
I guess I didn't think a lot about him not being there. It's sort of par for the course for how Trump kind of behaves. And I've told friends for a long time that you really, with Trump, you kind of have to separate what he says and and his policies. So his policies, if you look at them, were pretty, Republican, normal, conservative, right? Conservative court picks, tax cuts, regulatory reform. I mean, just kind of that kind of stuff. And what he said was, something that none of us have ever seen.
Right.
And so if you just kind of didn't pay attention to that, I think you would have saw a pretty conventional Republican actually in the White House for 4 years. I wish that he would have done things differently after the election. And I said it publicly a couple weeks after the election that, he should concede, even if you think that you won. At some point, the country's more important. And from a purely political perspective, Georgia was more important. And I firmly believe if we would have done things differently after the election, we would have kept at least one of those seats. And now we've given the Democrats unified power, and they're going to use it, and they're going to use it right away.
Yeah. Patty, Adam brought up something just then about that he obviously thinks that there's President Biden is not going to be super great for our country. And we're totally going to get into that. But do you believe that he is going to be? I assume so, right? And if so, why?
So I think from my perspective, when we talk about policy, yes, of course, there are some policies that I disagree with. But I think, in my opinion, Trump would have been much more successful if he would have taken a different path in the COVID. I think had he taken a different path in just not even so much policy, but actions, I think he would have won. But because he didn't take a path that backed science, that's what kind of started the trajectory the way it went. So I mean, you look at some of the things that he did that he's really not getting a lot of credit from in a policy wise. I mean, number one is warp speed. I mean, to be able to bypass all the regulations to come up with a vaccine in that short amount of time is so huge. But because COVID has been such a controversial topic, that he hasn't been able to garner the success out of that he should have been able to. So when I see, as we move forward with Biden, the cornerstone of that is going to be the fact that the vaccines are here, and Biden will take the logistics side to it and be successul with that, because people will be taking that vaccine. There's no question about it. So he'll be on the end part of it.
Adam, I noticed, I think it was yesterday and today, there's going to be a lot of them. There was a whole bunch of executive orders that were done. You had mentioned that you don't think he's going to be really all that great for our country. There's going to be some things that he does that are going to make your head spin and your face turn red. Do you have any examples or some things that are being discussed that you're going, man, here's an example?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of them. One that's near and dear to my heart is it appears that he's going to have the Interior Department relist the wolf as an endangered species, is shocking to me, because the Obama administration, which he was a part of, it was the original delister of it. And anybody that's in northern Wisconsin understands that there are more than enough wolves. There are way too many wolves, and we have to manage it at a state level. Even Tammy Baldwin agrees with that. So I was shocked to see that and disappointed. I hope somebody will talk some sense into them and let the states manage it. The other thing is this minimum wage deal. So you can think what you want about $15 an hour, but the thing that strikes me is the elimination of the tipped worker exemption, which is bartenders and servers for the most part. I'm going to tell you, there's not a person in Wisconsin that's going to sit down at a bar and pay $5 for a Busch Light. Not when they can buy a 30-pack at Quick Trip for $18. So not only will we cost these people their jobs, we're going to drive a lot of businesses out of business if he really goes through with the tipped worker exemption in the minimum wage hike. And I was reading this morning that, typically you have to get 60 votes for that kind of stuff, but they're going to really stretch what's called budget reconciliation to be able to do it on a bare majority. And you think there's been pain for bars and restaurants over the last year with COVID? Just wait until you get $15 an hour servers and bartenders. It's going to be brutal.
Sure. Patty, is that something that you support?
So I do support the minimum wage, but I think there is room for, conversation on the different types of employment. I don't think it's a one size fits all. I really don't. I mean, I used to be a bartender. I understand, the complexities of that, but I think we have to start somewhere. And I think one of the things that has bothered me, no matter who the president is when you legislate and govern by executive order and not collaboration. So, I mean, it's like, if you're going to do that, and so one writes a bunch of executive orders, then you get the next one gets rid of them, then that one writes a bunch of executive orders. So we're on this constant turning that nothing is consistent past 4 years, depending who's the president. And, when we became so partisan, that was the outcome. And that's why we're constantly in chaos. Legislators should be held accountable to, working together to collaborate what's best for their people and not necessarily their party in that. Sure. And we've really got away from that, in my opinion.
Do you think that should, right now, obviously, President Biden is going to be signing a lot of executive orders. Do you think he shouldn't and it should go through Congress?
Well, I think this is where we are today. It's like, after being in legislation, and Adam can attest to it, there's a lot of tit for tat that goes on.
No,
what?
None.
Yeah. And it really doesn't. And it's super frustrating if you're there to really get work done. So if you're really there to get work done, it's hard to do that. And that's just kind of the system that we have right now. And, I just kind of feel like that's why conversations like this are so important, so that we can show that you can have conversations and come to consensus, and we don't both have to win everything. We can work and kind of, give and take and figure out what is a collective solution that we can all live with. Right now the executive order thing, it kind of drives me a little crazy.
Sure. And I agree with you that we as citizens can work together and have those discussions. But why in the world, as you both now being former legislators, why don't legislators?
Yeah, I'll just say, I think there's a whole industry of sort of what I would call the outrage industry on the left and the right. And it's driven by cable news, it's driven by social media, and there's a lot of people on both sides that make a lot of money, when we dislike each other and when we're at war with each other. It's driven by campaigns, right? What gets people out to vote? Being mad or fearful of the other side, not because I really like what, this particular person is going to do. It's because I'm terrified of what the other person's going to do, because they keep putting ads in my mailbox and on my social media that, they're going to destroy the universe.
Yep.
I want to switch gears in a minute here to talk a little more Wisconsin stuff, including Ever's latest mandate. But we had a question I wanted to bring up. Hopefully you can see it on your screen on your guys' side from Joe. Does anyone think the Dems should drop the impeachment of Trump to help the country reunite? So that's a great question. Patty, we'll start with you. Do you think that Democrats should just leave this alone and let's, quote unquote, heal and just move on?
It's one of those things when you see, it was something we watched in real time and I mean, I've protested with the best of them, but I've never, broke into the Capitol and, sat in the president of the Senate's chair. And I mean, some of that stuff was just so overtly disrespectful and wrong. So how did they get to that point is important, and it's important to know how we got to that point. Someone has to be held accountable. We can't hold ourselves accountable as people in the community, as parents, as employers, as all that. We can't. If we don't hold our leaders accountable, then where do we go? So is impeachment the answer? I don't know, but we have to know the truth, and we have to know how did these people get from point A to point B? Because it was frightening, and someone's accountable to that.
Okay, so I just want to actually go back to exactly what they asked, because that was a good question. So yes or no, do you think that the Democrats should drop the impeachment of Trump to help the country reunite? Should they keep going forward, or they should leave this alone?
Well, I think they should go forward, yes, to find out what happened. We as Americans have a right to know what happened. Was the president the insider or not?
Sure.
Is there evidence that proves that? I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Adam?
Yeah, I disagree. I think they should drop it. I think it's silly. I think Patty is absolutely right that we should hold people accountable, but the people that should be held accountable are the ones that broke into the Capitol. I mean, I listened to the Trump speech. That's the one that everyone says incited the riot. And I would challenge you to show me the words that incited a riot. I fundamentally disagree. Could he have chosen his words better? Sure. But these people are adults and they should be held accountable. Donald Trump should not be held any more accountable for their ridiculous behavior than Patty should be held accountable for the behavior of BLM burning down Minneapolis this summer. At some point, we have to hold accountable the people who did this stuff. And I think it's horrible for the country. It's a horrible precedent. I'm not sure, and I'm not a constitutional scholar, but the Constitution is reasonably clear that you're impeaching a sitting president. He's not a sitting president. So I think continuing with the trial is nothing more than a charade that's going to really, really divide people. And if I was Joe Biden, I would ask the Senate to drop it. Let's move on. Let's try to, legislate in a 50-50 Senate. It's going to be rough anyway. And it's just going to make it even tougher to start on this foot.
Yeah, that'd be brilliant, actually. I never thought about that. If he was the one that came in and said, leave that alone, let's drop that and let's move forward. I mean, from a political standpoint, you both are, in politics, there's almost no downside to that, right? Or what am I missing? If they did decide to do it, the president is being the one doing it. If that happened, I don't see a whole lot of downside for President Biden.
Mm-hmm. I think we're looking at two totally different topics between the BLM movement and what happened in Washington. I think they were both. I mean, anytime you are destroying people's property, it's wrong. It's wrong. I think we can all agree on that. The reason that people are doing it are two totally different topics. One was for social justice, and one was for was it a fraudulent election? Those are two totally different topics, and I think then we need to have more meaningful conversations on those. I mean, we need to stop fighting and start talking.
Sure.
Because it seems like we're not talking and we're not listening.
You're watching Politically Speaking with Adam Jarchow and Patty Schachtner, presented by Kirkpatrick Law Offices. Attorney Matthew Kirkpatrick provides experienced, professional, efficient, and effective representation in criminal cases, collections, and other legal areas. More information, check him out on Facebook, Kirkpatrick Law Offices, or go to mzklawyer.com. That's M as in macaroni, Z as in zipper, K as in kayak. mzklawyer.com. I think those are right. I don't know. So let's switch a little bit here and get more into Wisconsin stuff, because ideally that's what I'd really like to have a lot of these shows more focused on Wisconsin and maybe even Northwest Wisconsin politics. Governor Evers' latest his latest emergency order and mask mandate. Adam, I'll let you go first. What are your thoughts on that?
Awful, just awful. I've
Put
hated
you down
it
as a
since
no.
the
Okay.
first one. I mean, I've hated it since the first one. I don't think this is the way to govern. I think there was a narrow window of 60 days where he had some authority to do things like this. Doing it over and over and over again makes a mockery of the legislature. I am urging in the strongest terms my former colleagues in the legislature to get in the game and repeal the executive order. Stop waiting for the courts to do your job. Do your job, legislators. Get in there and repeal it. Now, this is not about masks. I don't care if you have to wear a mask. I don't like it. I try not to wear one if I don't have to. That said, this is about the priority of the legislature and the legislature making the law. There's a law on the books that says 60 days, and he's just thumbing his nose at the legislature. And for whatever reason, legislators are just allowing it. And I know the reason, because they're looking at polling. Stop looking at polling and just do the right thing and repeal it.
Patty?
So coming from a medical perspective, I do support the mask mandate. And now that, but, here in Wisconsin, nobody follows it anyways. Even though we have a percentage of people that,
What?
So it's kind of hard to say that we want accountability when we pick and choose what rules we want to follow. So that there is one piece to it. But I agree with Adam. The legislature has an obligation to do their job and not sit back and not follow through with, come up with a better idea. If this isn't what you want, come up with a better idea, but don't be a coward and sit in the background and just, mock everybody. And that's kind of what we're seeing right now. And, they have an opportunity to lead, and instead it's silence, and it just makes everybody look weak. And I just, it's really frustrating. And now that we have the president has asked us to follow a 100-day mask wearing. He hasn't mandated, he's asked. It will be interesting to see how things go. But I mean, over 40,000 people died in this country yesterday of COVID. That's above and beyond the regular people that died. So this is starting to really, really impact our communities. I mean, you look out in California, they had to take off some of their emissions regulations so they could cremate more people. Just, wrap your head around that. So it's like this is really impacting our communities, and we should be collectively doing what's best, and we should expect leadership from our legislators.
Adam, what's your response?
Yeah, and I don't disagree that if we're going to have a mask mandate, it ought to go through the legislature. And the legislature clearly has that authority if that's what they want to do. But I do think it is cowardly for them to look at polling and say, well, the polling shows that a majority support it. And I think that's clear. That's what the polling does show. But I don't want to vote that way because my base, if I'm a Republican, does not support it. And if I'm a Democrat, I don't want to be seen as overturning my Democrat governor. And so I think there's plenty of cowardice to go around in the legislature right now, and it's really frustrating.
Yeah, so if the Republicans are looking, obviously now they're proposing some things, but they really haven't been a part of this for a while, right? Or at least in 2020, for the most of 2020, during a lot of this. But if the polling numbers are showing that people do support this, and if you're saying that people are looking at polls, then what were the Republicans looking at?
You mean leading up to the election?
Right.
Yeah, no, I think that's what they were looking at, and that's why they didn't come back into session to repeal the mask mandate. They didn't want to do it before an election when it's a 70% issue.
Got it. The COVID, obviously, with all of this, kind of ties into this as well. How's Wisconsin doing? What are your thoughts on, obviously, Patty, not only are you a former legislator, you're also in the medical world. How are we doing in Wisconsin with COVID in terms of how we've handled it, and maybe even piggybacking on that, the vaccine rollout?
So it's funny not funny, but funny, ironic when you talk about the vaccine rollout. I got my first shot last week, and I was super excited to get it. But when you look at the vaccine rollout, you have to look at logistics. And clearly most people aren't looking at logistics. They don't understand, what it is. So when I got mine, first you have to schedule an appointment, then you get in and then you register, and then you have a person there that's educating you, and then you go to the next step, and then you have a person that gives you the shot, and then you go to another scheduler, and then you have to sit for 15 minutes where you're monitored. So that's just for one person. So they were doing 6 people every half hour. That's how many people they could get in. Well, you look at, these are also our public health officials that they also have to do their public health job. So logistics are huge. And what does every shot entail? You're talking syringes, you're talking alcohol prep, you're talking the paperwork, the data, all that there's stuff that has to be entered. So there's a lot of logistics we don't have. I think it's really smart to utilize the National Guard and any type of, big empty buildings that we have right now to make them into vaccination centers. Clearly, we don't have that set up yet. But I think a lot of people are thinking back to the days when I went to school, when we had mass vaccines, and literally we had like a cow vet thing with a big vat of vaccine on it with an electric gun. And we stood in line and it was everybody with the same needle, and we could never figure out why the last one, the high school football star, always passed out. Well, it's because the needle was flat. It was flat. Sure. So today's vaccinations are very different, and then in the midst of all that, you have to have social distancing. So we might not be there yet, but we have to raise our expectations. It's not as easy as just getting a shot. There's a lot of work that has to be done to get there.
Okay. Adam?
Yeah, so this is my biggest criticism of Tony Evers. When he got elected, I thought, I won't agree with him on everything, but whatever. We can deal with it for only 4 years, not 8, only 4. But you know what? His management is the most incompetent I've ever seen in any governor anywhere. And it started with the unemployment insurance thing. It's just so unbelievable that we're a year into this and people still can't get unemployment insurance. It's shocking. And now, I just saw this data yesterday. We're dead last in the Midwest in our vaccinations. There are 700,000 doses allocated to Wisconsin, and he's whining that he's not getting enough doses. He's only ordered 400 of the 700. And of that, he's only used about 200. So, Tommy Thompson, who's now running the University of Wisconsin-Madison, or the university system, I should say, has offered to help. And you know what? I didn't like Jim Doyle, but I guarantee you Jim Doyle would have managed this better. Tommy Thompson would have managed this better. Scott Walker would have managed this better. Governor Evers is falling flat on his face, and he needs to get up again and get this right. We should never, ever in Wisconsin be dead last in the Midwest, and that's where we find ourselves. It is shocking.
Well, I would push back on that because, part of that, you can only do with what you have resources for. So if you have all these vaccinations and you don't have the staff in the counties, you look at some of our smallest counties, don't have the people to do it or the resource to do it. And when you have, here's your doses, but you don't have the storage facilities, you don't have the things that you need to make it happen, that there is where this here should have came from a FEMA perspective and utilizing all of our resources, our National Guard, to get it out there. Because I know in my county, our public health system only has 17 public health nurses to serve 94,000 people. So then you go to each county. Why do we have this huge unrealistic expectation of our people that have to do the work and don't get them the resources? And by getting the resources, you need people. You need all those supplies that go with it. So it's real easy to say that people are incompetent until you look at where the incompetence started, which was at the top, at the federal level, that did not pass down the resources that we needed. When you can gather 25,000 National Guard people to protect the Capitol in 2 weeks, there is no reason that the minute that those vaccines were open, that we couldn't get our National Guard people working at every state to get these vaccinations out there. But because we didn't have it at the top, it followed through all the way down to the local level.
Yeah,
When I got
and I
my
think-
shot, we had 36 shots were available that day. 36. So
And I think-
that tells you about storage and stuff.
And I think you come at it from a very good liberal hippie Democrat perspective, which is only public health people can do this. And what other states, including Florida, have shown us is that if they have a public-private partnership and they're using big pharmacies and others to administer it, and they really have somebody that's basically a vaccine czar that's running the show, that we can use not only the public resources, because I hear you. I mean, we don't have hardly any of that in Polk County either. And so the idea that we'd have to only use public resources is a very good liberal Democrat talking point. But we have the entire private sector who would get on board to help out.
Yeah.
Well, and then who's going to pay for it? So, you know, I mean, you have.
Whoa, slow down. Did I just hear a Democrat say who's going to pay for it?
Yeah. You know, I work in the county, and you're always looking who's going to pay for your stuff. Then here's the requirements. Here's your mandates. This is what you got to do. Who's going to pay for it? So it's nothing worse than an unfunded mandate.
Yeah, and I get that. You know, when you look at Evers, and I think Adam, I think you brought it up earlier when we were talking about, I think it was either Biden or Trump, and getting to kind of look at you have to make your own decisions, and the actions of someone else doesn't necessarily dictate or shouldn't dictate how you respond and the actions that you then end up taking. But at some point, you both discussed this, about somebody has to be held accountable at some point. And I get the federal level, and maybe they didn't do this. I know there's been some talk about, man, we need like a federal plan for every state instead of having 50 states all having their own plans, and some are going well and some aren't. Maybe the government should step in, and this is exactly how we're all going to roll it out. But just in Wisconsin, and just over the last 8 months, it's Evers, and it's not because it's Tony Evers. It's just our governor, whomever the governor is. Is that the person that we still have to look at and go, okay, I mean, there had to be a plan. I mean, we're like 8 months in, and it seems like we're getting worse at handling COVID now than we were before, which is really interesting. But at some point, we need to have a plan for this. And last I heard, there really isn't one yet. So who is held accountable to that? Because it's not like we can, buy our bootstraps, and go out and go get our own. We can't. We're just waiting on a plan.
Well, I think we want our cake and then we want to eat it too.
That'd be nice.
I mean, we want a plan, but then we don't want. But then we say, but we want it to be local. So we have figured out a way to make sure that there is no plan. So we want the governor to say what he needs to say, and then we don't like what he says. So then we tell our local government entities, now what do you guys think? And then they don't do. So it's like it's constantly everyone's fighting, and nobody, so you have public health is saying this is what we need to do, and then you have local governments saying no, we don't want to do that. And clearly what's going on in some of our border communities is clear that the rules are fine on this side of the border, but we're just going to hop the border then, and we're going to follow the rules over here because we like them better. And is why we are where we are.
I have one more thing that I just written down, and that's all I would have, but certainly we can discuss anything else that you would like. When it comes to the mask mandate in Wisconsin, when it comes to public health emergencies, there is always this list of what are essential businesses and what aren't. I'm curious about what your thoughts are, both of you, your thoughts on how they come up with those, and are those the right businesses? Should we have those? Should we not have those? There's some businesses that, they've either hurt or they're pretty much done because of that one thing. They didn't even get the chance to put in their own plan. They fell under this list, and okay, we're out of business. What are your thoughts? Adam, we'll start with you. Your thoughts on the exemption list. Which things are and which are essential businesses and which aren't? Oh, you still there, Adam? You can hear us, but we can't hear you, buddy. You may have hit mute. Hold on. All right, so Patty, we'll start with you. And I'll see if we can get his audio here back up. And now he just signed out. Fantastic.
Uh-oh.
All right, so we'll just go with you. I guess you didn't want to answer the question.
So essential business, I think when this started back in March of last year, March, when this whole thing really started, it seemed like it was very sporadic. And of course, we were very worried about what was going to happen in, what was going on with COVID. We've evolved since then, but I think, if we want business to be successful, your customers have to feel safe. And, that's what matters. So I think after this is all done, trying to figure out how, customers feel safe is going to be really important. And you can see the businesses that followed through with that. And then you can see the businesses that did not, or the ones that they're just having a real struggle, even with customers not being respectful of how they want their business to be run. So, I mean, I don't think picking and choosing who is essential and who is not is the answer. But I do think figuring out how to make it so that everybody wants to come back to your business is going to be really important as we move forward.
Real quick before I ask Adam that, first of all, Adam, can you say something so we can make sure your audio is working?
Yeah, is it working?
Okay, it is. All right, so before, Adam, your opinion. Patty, tell me, what do you think Adam is going to say?
It's all a pile of crap.
All right.
Let me see your whiteboard. What'd you write down?
Yeah. You know what? We should do that for a new segment going forward.
Pile of crap.
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yes, you answer questions for the other person. We're totally doing that for a new segment for our next show.
Yeah.
I do think it's a pile of crap. And you know what?
Say, all right.
You know what frustrates me about this deal is at the beginning we didn't really know what it was, and we were struggling to figure out who was susceptible. Well, we know who it is, and it's mostly older people, a smattering of people that have some underlying conditions. But the people that it's not, that we know for sure that it's not now, are kids, and we haven't fixed our issue with our schools. We are destroying the educational opportunities of kids all across this country for, in my opinion, no reason now. I mean, literally in Wisconsin, 0 kids have died from COVID. 0. There was a little experiment that was done at Lakeland School up in Minocqua. They were doing the contact tracing and the quarantining, and they had a little over 300 kids that they had quarantined for contact tracing. You want to know how many of those over 300 kids developed COVID? 0. Exactly 0. And so at some point we have to do a better job. And this is where I totally agree with Patty, that if Tony Evers and the Senate Majority Leader and the Speaker of the Assembly would get in a room, and Tony Evers wouldn't record them, if they could get in a room and have a conversation and figure out how to, get the vaccine out there and how to protect the older and more vulnerable people and make sure that our kids are being educated, I think we'd all be a lot happier with what's going on with COVID. I think it would resolve 70 to 80% of our disagreements. And for whatever reason, it seems like we're just stuck in pointing fingers at each other, and we need to quit it and just do what the science has shown us by protecting those who need to be protected and getting the dang vaccine out there so the older people can feel confident to go back out to restaurants and bars and all those other things so we can keep our economy going.
Yeah.
I would also add to that, when you're talking about education, there's a whole piece to this that no one's really looking at, and that is the fact that there is a whole segment of students that are thriving right now that were not thriving when they were in school because of bullying, because of all the social problems that were going on. And they're thriving, and the parents are talking about it. They're saying, you know what, my kid's getting more sleep now. They're not constantly worried about what's going on social media. They're not being bullied. When we actually look at the actual suicide of teenagers right now, it's actually quite interesting that the numbers are going down. So without a plan on how to address this as they move forward to back into school, and if we say we want everything exactly the way it was, well, what happened then? This teenage suicide was a huge issue, and it's not going on right now. It's not that it never happens. It's certainly not going on as often as it has in the past. So there's a real question about what is education going to look like post-COVID, and what do we do with the students who are thriving with virtual school, who are thriving with hybrid models?
Oh my goodness, Patty, we have found common ground. I can't believe it.
Hold on. I gotta write this down.
I have been screaming for years that there is a segment of students who would do better with a virtual learning model, a real honest to God virtual learning model, not this deal where you call and check in for a half an hour, but an honest to God virtual learning model. And we've seen it at the Grantsburg school where they have their online charter school, and it's incredibly successful. This is a good way to educate a lot of kids and to keep our tax burden down. This is a place where hopefully Republicans and Democrats could find some common ground.
Broadband.
Yes. Specifically at Patty's house. Let's start there, and we can just branch out.
Right.
Awesome. Boy, I really want to get into that. I'm going to do some research on the educational pieces. I'm going to contact a couple of our area superintendents and kind of get their thoughts on it before our next show, because that is something I never thought about. And the fact that you do, actually have agree on one thing, you have on a few, but I've never even thought about that as Patty has said, what's school going to look like when this is all finished? And should we incorporate some remote learning? And as Adam had mentioned, like legitimately, not just, like one of my daughters, Riley, she does phenomenal during the remote learning. And actually she's at home right now anyway, because, she's close contact things. Someone had something, so she can't be in school. She does exceptionally well doing this at home. Now, my youngest son, Kenneth, not so much. He needs that social interaction. He does much better when he is out and he's walking in between classes and some energy. Everyone's a little bit different, and some I think would do better and some wouldn't. But as long as it doesn't hurt the school and it doesn't take any away from their revenue, and as long as they're all at the same pace, as it were, or keeping up with it, I really don't see a downside. But there has to be, right? Because everything has to have a downside to it. I don't know what that is. Is there one?
I think primarily because education is one of those things that we're really afraid to talk about. So the easiest thing is to go back to the way it was in the 1800s, where all the students are in a row, in a box, with a teacher in the front, learning the same way.
I'll be fine with
that. Now it's the 21st century. And because of this pandemic, we have realized that kids can learn pretty much anywhere and everywhere. So it opens up an opportunity to really look at education in the 21st century. And what does that mean? Does that mean we have to have $200 million buildings? Maybe it doesn't. Does it mean that we have to have all this stuff? Maybe it looks differently, and we have to be really thoughtful and really push each other to really think about what education looks like. It's different. There's no question about it, and we have to be mindful of that.
All right. Well, I just real quick, and I know we're kind of already past. We didn't really know how long it's going to go, but I think it's like at 45 minutes. But there, I was just kind of scrolling up, looking at some comments. I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to put most of these on for show. We're just trying to figure this out. But there was something that I thought was interesting. You should be able to see it on your screen from Greg. Can you ask about their opinions on social media censorship? Do they believe legislation needs to be created to address what's going on in future issues? Patty, you just finished commenting on something. So, Adam, if you want to take that one first, what are your opinions about the censorship right now with social media?
Yeah, I'm generally a libertarian, so I don't like it when the government gets involved in regulating anything. That said, I think we've kind of crossed this threshold of these big tech companies and the power that they hold. The idea that Amazon on its own can end $1 billion business overnight, the Parler app, it's pretty scary, and it gets to almost to kind of like antitrust territory. So I do think that there's probably some room here for some sort of, I don't know what you want to call it, regulation. I don't know that we're there to break them up, but I think there needs to be something when these tech companies get this big and this powerful.
Sure. Patty?
That's the fifth thing we've agreed on.
Oh, my goodness gracious. This show sucks.
Adam's, I swear, by the time we're done with this, Adam's going to be wearing tie-dye. I just know.
Yeah.
I look good in tie-dye. It's awesome.
Adam will be in
and
tie-dye.
bell bottoms.
Yes. That'll be in tie-dye, and Patty won't be wearing a mask. It'll be perfect.
I have some tie-dye ones.
Awesome. Thank you both. I can't wait for our next show. I can't wait to actually go back and watch this and look through some of these comments, and I'll get to those when we're finished. And certainly, Adam and Patty, go through if there's any questions that were in the comments, if you want to respond to those when we're finished here. Thank you so much for doing this. I think we right now have this scheduled for a monthly chat. I think it's the third Thursday of every month, which is, that's today, third Thursday. So as of right now, we'll be back on the third Thursday of next month, whatever day that is, at 8:30 in the morning. We'll try to do a little better next time. But, I kind of like just winging it anyway. So thank you both for agreeing to do this. Any last words, Patty, last thing you want to say? Comments about anything?
I thoroughly enjoyed it. And thank you, Adam and Ben, for, listening to my crazy idea and helping make this happen, because I think it's going to be awesome, and I think we can really show folks that we can have conversations. It's not that hard.
Yeah. Adam?
Yeah, I agree, and I really look forward to future shows where we're really engaged on Wisconsin topics. I think that's going to be the bread and butter here with the dearth of news from Wisconsin that we get, and I think we'll be able to really dissect the budget process and the map making process. This is gonna be a really interesting political year in Wisconsin. Probably a couple months from now, we'll see them start announcing that they're running for governor, and it's gonna be awesome. And we're gonna have some good stuff to talk about.
Awesome.
Yep.
Thank you
I
both
agree.
for doing this. It's been great. Unless anything changes, we'll see you in a month.
See ya.
Sounds great.
All right,
Thanks.
cool.
Have a good day.
You've been watching Politically Speaking with Adam Jarchow and Patty Schachtner, presented by Kirkpatrick Law Offices. Attorney Matthew Kirkpatrick provides experienced, professional, efficient, and effective representation in criminal defense, collections, and other legal areas. For more information, find him on Facebook, Kirkpatrick Law Offices, or simply go to mzklawyer.com. That's M monolithic, Z zigzag, and K kaleidoscope, lawyer.com. mzklawyer.com. We hope you enjoy the show as much as we enjoyed doing it. Until next time, stay safe, keep your social distance, and as always, have a blessed day.